Hey friend, I'm about to tell you everything you need to know when planning your future trip to China. Now, by no means am I an expert. Mark and I have only visited China over about 2 weeks over two separate trips quite recently, one to Guangzhou and one to Beijing. But we learned so much on those trips about practical aspects of traveling in China, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to prepare ahead of time to make your trip smooth and easy. Now, think what you will about China, but until you visit, I'm going to tell you straight out, you have no idea what you're talking about. China is an amazing country for tourism, and we had such a good time. And just to have all those myths wiped away in a visit, it was just phenomenal. China is living in the future, and China really can be an example to a lot of countries around the world. Yes, I said it. I'm not getting into the politics of any of it. I'm just talking about the practical aspects of day-to-day living that make China really ideal, and they really got it going on. The first thing I'm going to talk about are the payment systems in China. And before I get into those specific systems, I want to talk about a couple of fintechs that I think that as a traveler you should have that would make your overall travelers much, much easier. If you don't already, you should open an account with Wise and or with Revolut and or many of the other fintechs that are out there, but I'm only going to talk about those two because those are the two that we have. Now, if you're not familiar with a fintech or with financial technology, it's basically some kind of organization, some kind of program, some kind of digital technology that makes things easier. And I'm talking primarily about banking and money transactions. So when you think of a fintech, don't confuse it with a bank because they are not banks. They are companies or organizations that help you transfer money amongst different currencies pretty painlessly. Mark and I have used Wise on our travels since the pre-COVID days, and we started using Revolut, I think, in 2023 or 2024. And honestly, I like Revolut a lot better. It just seems much more seamless to use on the go. The great thing about these fintechs is they provide you with a level of convenience and they can often save you on some fees. Basically, how we use them is we'll load some money up into these virtual accounts, and basically we do it by having it come from our US bank debit card. And so that way, by using our debit card, the fees might be a little bit higher to get the money into your fintech account, but the money gets there immediately. There are no delays in getting your money into your Wise or your Revolut account. And once you have some US dollars saved onto your Wise or Revolut account, you can then use the debit card that is issued with your Wise or Revolut account. I'm talking a physical debit card, and you can withdraw cash from ATMs in many countries around the world. And although you hold that money in US dollars, when you use your Wise or Revolut debit card, those monies will come out of the ATM in the currency of the country you are in. So basically, you're cutting down on the amount of fees usually that your US bank would charge you if you used your US debit card directly in overseas ATMs. Also, I will say that yes, there are some cards that reimburse you the ATM fees. I'm mainly talking about Charles Schwab cards and Fidelity cards, but I am talking to people in this video who do not have a Charles Schwab account and who do not have a Fidelity account. Now, I know this video is about China and everything you need to set yourself up for your trip to China, but I think it's really important that you understand how a FinTech works before you get out there and start traveling. And especially when you're going to China, having a FinTech helps immensely. There are so many more details I could get into about the FinTechs, but this video is not about that. Now, if that's something you would like to hear more about, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to make a video explaining how we use those FinTechs and how they help us save money and have more convenience in our travels. Now, back to China. So, China uses cashless payments, and I had researched this quite a bit, and most of the things I found said, oh, bring a little bit of cash, but most of the things will be scan to pay. Well, I can tell you on 2 trips to China, Mark and I brought zero amount of cash. We didn't bring any, and we didn't need any. So that's how much of a cashless society China is when it comes to day-to-day living, payments, vacation, etc. So the 2 main payment methods that are used in China are Alipay and WeChat Pay. And we set up both of those. Now, WeChat is basically a chat program like WhatsApp, like Line, but it has a payment mechanism built into it. Alipay is an app that is mainly used, that we mainly used it for payments and transport. So for Alipay and WeChat, you can set both of these up before you even take off for your trip to China. And you just download the app and run through all of the setup information. And how you use these in real time is you can assign a payment card to the app. And so what we did was we assigned a Revolut payment card to our Alipay app. So every time we needed to go buy something, whether it was at a convenience store, a restaurant, a roadside stop, something on the street snacks, everybody took Alipay. And so we would open our app, they would scan the QR code, and the payment would be made. We had zero problems with this method because we had a Revolut card attached to the Alipay app. I read in a lot of my research that people would have problems with these apps if they had their regular country bank card attached to the app, because sometimes the bank card in their home country wouldn't approve the payment. And so with Alipay and with using a Revolut card attached to it, we had zero problems having our payments processed, and we never needed cash as a backup. WeChat is very similar, and we didn't use WeChat Pay on our trip to Guangzhou, but we did use it in Beijing for quite a few food deliveries to our hotel, and so it worked in the same way. So do yourself a huge favor and set these apps up before you even leave. The next app that you're going to want to download is called AMAP, and I think it stands for Apple Maps. I'm not really sure. I gave up the iPhone years and years ago, but AMAP is what you want to use in place of Google Maps, because China doesn't use Google Maps. So if you want to find your way around, if you want to see things going on, if you want to get walking directions, it's got everything, restaurant reviews, everything. Download AMAP, because that is going to be your friend while you're in China. The next app that you're going to want to download is called Didi, and that is China's equivalent to Grab, Uber. I'm talking about for rides. So we never used Didi while we were in China because we pretty much walked everywhere or took public transportation. But if you use ride hailing apps regularly, you're going to want to download Didi. Now, also within Alipay, there are options to use Didi from within Alipay. So once you start downloading these apps and see what they're like, you'll see that there are several ways to access those common things that you're going to need every day. Now, for planning your trip to China, you're going to want to download the trip.com app. And this was a new one to me. I had never used this app or website before traveling to China, but basically all of China's travel arrangements within China, the Chinese themselves, they use a Chinese version of this trip.com. I think it's like ctrip.com or something like that. But anything you want to book, your hotels, your airport transportation, your excursions, if you want to book anything, you can book it all through trip.com, and it's actually pretty seamless. We booked our hotels through trip.com. We booked airport transportation. We booked our excursion to the Great Wall through trip.com. It worked great, and the interface is just really friendly. There's a nice chat section that you can chat with the provider with which you're booking. It's just an app that works really well, and you're going to need that to plan all those aspects of your trip to China. I'll talk a minute about access to the internet and how you can use all of your apps and everything that you normally use while you're in China. Because in China, there is something called the Great Firewall. And that firewall blocks websites like Google, all the Googles, and many others. So if you're hooking up to Wi-Fi in China, just know that you're not going to have access to those websites unless you use a VPN. And depending upon your VPN, your regular VPN that you use every day might not work in China. So what we did, we purchased an eSIM on the trip.com website, and it was fairly economical. We over exaggerated how much data we would need, and they had options that gave up to 100 gigabytes of data per day. And of course we got that one because for the duration of our trip, it was fairly inexpensive, and I'll put the price on the screen right now. I don't remember exactly, but I can tell you for the number of days. And so we bought the eSIM ahead of time, installed it, and when our plane landed in China, we turned on our phones, had that eSIM, and boom, we had data immediately while we were still taxiing on the tarmac. And the good thing about the eSIMs sold on trip.com is they automatically have a VPN built into them. And so you don't need any kind of VPN to reach your regular websites that you're used to looking at. And this was super convenient. We didn't have any issues with it, and we were able to have enough data throughout our trip. We could use that eSIM as a hotspot, so that worked really well to hook up our computers and iPads. It was really seamless. Just get it. It's going to save you a lot of headaches. You're not going to need an extra VPN to get to your Gmail account, etc., etc. Highly recommend an eSIM bought on trip.com. The final thing I'll talk about in this video is your access to China. And I'm speaking as a U.S. citizen because I'm a U.S. citizen, and that's the only citizenship I really researched. Entering into China, what are your options? There is a visa exemption for many countries, and you can enter on this special program. I can't remember what the acronym is. I'll put it up on the screen, but it allows for 240 hours entry, 10 days entry into China. The way this exemption works is you have to enter China from a third country. So whatever country you're coming from, you have to exit China to another country. So it's almost like it's an extended transit visa where you're just kind of passing through China. So an example would be if you're flying to China from Vietnam, you enter China from Vietnam. You cannot fly out of China back to Vietnam. You have to fly to another country. And to make this somewhat easier, you've got Hong Kong, you've got Macau. Those are really close to southern China, and Taiwan, let's say. So from China, you need to go to another country first if you're trying to go back to Vietnam. That's just an example. And I'll put a link in the description that talks more about this. But yes, just know if you're using that visa exempt, if you just want to roll up to China, you have to make sure you're exiting to a different country on your way out of China than the country you entered from. Or you can just get a China tourist visa. And that's what Mark and I did because the process seemed very straightforward when I started researching it. And I was like, hey, let's just get this visa. We'll have it. And then if we ever want to visit China, we can do so over time. The Chinese tourist visa that is issued to U.S. citizens actually allows you to stay in China for 60 days at a time. And the visa itself is good for 10 years. And so we got that visa in Ho Chi Minh City because that's where we were based at the time. And basically, it's a very straightforward process. You simply fill out an application and you submit all of your information online. And then once the Chinese embassy in Ho Chi Minh City, in our case, reviews all of your information, they contact you and say, okay, all your information is great. Come in for an appointment to process this visa. And so we got all of our information online. We had to resubmit a few things because sometimes things get lost in translation. And we got all of our information together. And then we went to the Chinese consulate and we gave them all of our documents in person. And you also need to leave your passport because I believe they send everything by courier to China and have the visas issued there. And so it took about a week or so, and we got our passports back with our visas to China in them. So we were pretty stoked about that. Okay, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video, and I probably should have mentioned it at the top of the video when I was talking about apps to download and such. Many people go to China worried about the language barrier. And yes, the language barrier is real, but you just need a friendly translator app to do all your translations. And our app that we use there is DeepL. It was really user-friendly. People in China were very willing to talk into the translator app. It just helped with little day-to-day things. Now, in China itself, a lot of the information as far as signage goes, especially with transportation, is also in English. But I can tell you, restaurant menus, you're going to spend some time with your translator when you go to restaurants. So just be prepared for that and kind of lean into it and think about it as a fun little exercise. Because if you think about it any other way, you're going to get frustrated. But you really want to know what you're ordering, what you're eating, and the translator app will be your best friend when you're there. We really loved our 2 separate trips to China. There was definitely a different vibe in Guangzhou than there was in Beijing, the capital. In both places, people were just really nice, really friendly, really willing to help. And what we really noticed about both cities, it was just like a bunch of normal people going about their day-to-day business. And so that was really refreshing to see because China is so much of a mystery to many of us. And it basically was just another cool place with cool people just doing their day-to-day things. So let me know what you think about this video. If you have any questions about anything, please leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer your questions. And as always, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.